Dr. Kevin Egrith is an inspirational speaker, marriage coach, television show host, author, and a licensed ordained minister. Today, Kevin will be talking about the contrast effect. Kevin Egrith, the contrast effect, Kevin Egrith.
Yeah, so the contrast effect, that's what I want to talk with you guys about today. So let's dig right in. So contrast unnecessarily amplifies our focus. Lack of contrast unnecessarily obscures our focus as well. You probably noticed when you came from the hallway and came into the room, nobody thought twice about the temperature, did they? Because it was the same. There's no contrast to catch our attention, to catch our focus. See, both effects are greatly exaggerated of contrast, both contrast effect working forward and working backward. So let's dig into that a little bit and talk about that. The human brain has 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of static. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of stuff for us to sort through and kind of process. Not to mention that, but we have all this visual input coming in. You know, people's expressions. Are you interested? You're grimacing at me. You must not like me. You're sleeping down there at the end. Okay. So we have all this visual input, and then we have our input coming to our ears. And the brain just goes overload, and what's it do? It's looking for patterns, and it's looking for contrast. It's looking for differences, things that will really stand out. Like a person sleeping at the end of the room is really going to stand out to us because everybody else is entirely engaged. And so that's really going to catch a person's attention that way. So it's the differences and the contrast. So I'm going to share with you 3 illustrations of the contrast effect. The first is going to be porn and romance novels. And I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time on that because there's 2 points I want to convey. One is I want to convince you to stop using porn and romance novels. Nobody in this room would be, but maybe in the viewing audience there would be somebody. And then 2 is I want to show you the destructive power of the contrast effect. There's going to be another illustration, which will be Facebook, and then a third illustration, which is a lack of contrast or obscuring our focus. So, and then to wrap it up, I'm going to give you something for free. Anybody like free stuff?
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, all right. So let's dive right in here. Let's start off with, well, what's wrong with porn and romance novels? What's wrong with that? So, okay, we're going to leave alone the moral issues. I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to leave that alone. Everybody has their own perspectives, and some people may agree or may disagree. I'm also going to leave alone the fact that it probably, if a person views pornography, it probably greatly grieves their spouse. In fact, most wives will say that if their husband views pornography, that they liken it to an affair. It's incredibly painful to them, it's destructive to them, and just grieves them very deeply. But I'm going to leave that alone because I want to try to convince everybody, even the most selfish people, that pornography is bad for them. So I want to give them a selfish focus. And that romance novels are bad for them. So once again, I want to give them a selfish focus to hopefully hit everybody. Let's examine the lies that we're conditioning in our mind and why they're so bad for you. So porn is a lie. That's why it's so bad for us, and it conditions our mind with a lie. Romance novels are a lie, and it conditions our mind with these lies. So let's just take a look at some of the lies. So for porn, it would be that women are immediately sexually responsive, that women desire sexual frequency the same or more than what men do, that women do not need loving relationship to be sexually motivated, that women are consistently sexual initiators, that women are game for anything sexually. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, I understand, but for the most part, I think you all would agree that's pretty much a lie that's perpetrated by pornography. And then we program our minds with that, and we start to think that that's reality, that that's truthfulness. And when that doesn't play out in real life, we become incredibly discontent with real life. Romance novels, very much the same thing. When a man loves you, he will consistently give you his undying attention and focus. It's a lie. You know, that's the picture comes to mind where the guy comes home from work. He doesn't think about work anymore. His focus isn't on that. His focus isn't on all the house chores he has to do. His focus is just going down to the end of the dock in the sunset and the nice tropical breeze, visiting for hours on end with you. And of course, you'll never think about the fish that's off the end of that dock. So another perpetrated lie is men are deeply emotional and passionate, just the exact same way that women are. And so we think this, women will tend to think this lie, and they'll be completely unsatisfied with their husband. They'll think, what's wrong with this guy? He's like a robot. He has no emotions. What is wrong with it? I really got a lemon here. Another lie is when a man loves you, you don't need to be attractive anymore. Now you can lay around the house in your sweatpants. Every meal can be chocolate ice cream and cake. Makeup, what's that? You don't have to do that anymore. And so these lies get perpetrated, and they form our expectations. I mean, when we keep filling our minds with these things, we think it's reality, and we expect that. And then when it doesn't happen that way, we become completely discontented. Especially if we start to have our imagination, we allow our imagination to start chewing on these things. You know, we start thinking that everything's supposed to be romantic, and my husband's supposed to be so emotional. And next time we think, what is wrong here? What is going on here? And what happens is it ends up birthing an addiction. Now, everybody's probably heard of a pornography addiction. There's also romance novel addictions. See, the more you become discontent with real life, people want to get further into their addiction. They get further into pornography. They go to maybe hardcore pornography or abusive forms of pornography. Or with romance novels, you'll occasionally will notice a person reading their novel, even on all their 15-minute breaks at work. And their lunch break, they're reading that while they're eating their lunch. They don't even interact with other people hardly anymore. They get home from work, and they're reading their novels. And they get further and further in to the point where it births an addiction and a great dissatisfaction with life. So I want to go with the second illustration now, which is Facebook. So I think the best way for me to illustrate this is like this. This past summer, me and some friends were down in Stillwater. We're at the Freight House, having a nice meal, overlooking the St. Croix River. It was a beautiful, it wasn't too hot, not too cold. The sun was out. It was like a tropical breeze. Just a really nice time. And I noticed relationships. I kind of pick up on that. Well, there's this table sitting right near us, and it was a guy and a gal, and you never would have known that they were a couple. They ate the whole meal, only said a few words. They didn't have smiles on their faces. They hardly even interacted. You never would have known. They didn't look loving. They weren't hardly communicating. And right at the end of their meal, they slid their chairs together. They put big smiles on their faces. She wrapped around his shoulder, and they took a selfie with smiles to show the whole world on Facebook that they're interactive and that they're intimate and that they're loving and that they're touching and that they're so close. And, I find it so interesting because we see all these pictures out on Facebook, and then we say, why isn't my marriage like that? Why aren't we happy all the time? Why aren't we constantly smiling all the time? Why aren't we hugging each other all the time? What is wrong? Everybody else is having that. And it's that contrast effect that's gone amok on us. Then the discontentment, sets in because we think the difference between what we want or what we perceive, what we think others have, and between what we have, that gap we call the discontentment gap, and that just begins to set in. So now I'm going to go to the third illustration, which is, I had a guy, he emailed me, and he says, I got to talk to you right away. And he wanted to fly me out immediately. He didn't care what my schedule was. He wanted me to come out and see him. I said, well, what's going on? What's wrong here? He says, my wife, she told me she doesn't love me anymore. And she wants to have a divorce. She doesn't love me anymore. And I said, well, what's going on? I mean, is there some big problem? How long has this been happening for? No, he hardly even saw it coming. They didn't have any big problems. They're not fighting. They're not having, he's not having alcohol abuse or physical abuse or these big things that you would imagine. And so I asked him, I said, who told her that she was out of love with you? Well, I don't think anybody told her. So, well, how does she know? Well, I don't know how she knows. Place 95% odds on it. No major problems. 95% odds she's having an affair. I suggest you hire a private investigator immediately and get enough evidence that would convince a jury. He said, well, how can you? No, she would never do that. How can you be so convinced of it? Because most of the time when people fall out of love and they get into that friendship zone, they don't even know it. Because there's not enough contrast to make a stark difference to them. Now, it's different if you're having big problems and you're hating each other. Obviously, the difference between hate and love is significant enough where you know the difference. But just falling into friendship, people don't know. They don't sense that happening. It's too gradual. It happens over too long of a period of time, and they don't even sense it happening. So that's the contrast effect working in reverse. What's the big problem with falling out of love in a marriage? I mean, obviously we all want to be in love, but what's the big problem if you do fall out of love? Well, you're far less motivated to meet each other's intimate emotional needs. You're far less motivated to solve problems on a mutual basis without you kind of getting one up, if you know what I mean. You're more susceptible to fall into an affair. Now, I can see on your faces, you say, an affair. Oh, no, I'm a good moral person. I would never have an affair. That's not me. You're talking about somebody else. That would not be me. You see, even pastors have affairs by accident. Psychologists have affairs by accident. And the ones that are willing to answer the polls and willing to report their experience, they will all tell you that they never expected it to happen to them. Never thought they could do that. Never thought they'd be capable of such a thing. And for those who had a spouse that fell into an affair, they never thought their spouse would do that. This is a person that goes to church, that helps feed starving children or whatever the case might be. They're good people. They would never do that. People fall into these things when they become susceptible because there's not love in their marriage. I think one of the most important things that people need to have is a set of gauges to see where their love is at. Are they still in love? A lot of love? Not so much? Heading towards the friendship zone? Just like a set of flight controls. When you go, when an airline pilot flies their airplane, they got the flight controls, and they got to watch those every once in a while because they will begin to feel like they're leveled out, like they're going straight, and in fact, the airplane could be at a decline. And so they need those flight controls because they cannot trust their senses. There's been many crashes. Kennedy had a crash. They ascertained that was because he lost his visual cues. He didn't look at the instruments. The instruments would have kept him on track. He went by his senses, by how he felt. There's all kinds of stories in the airline industry about people that just went by their senses tricked them, and they ended up crashing. So you cannot trust your sense. So I have a test that I want to offer to anybody who's interested. They can go to marriagepartnersministry.com and just send in an email, and we'll give you a test. We call it the Love Spiral Check-In. And you can take the test yourself, and that will let you know if you're still in love with your spouse. And if you'd like to, you can give the test to your spouse, and that will let you know if they're still in love with you. And then you'll have an accurate gauge of exactly where you're at. Some people might say, oh boy, I don't know if I want to know. I don't know. It's actually, that's not a bad thing if you know. It's a bad thing if an affair happens and you find out the hard way. It's a bad thing if you lose so much motivation that you're just practically ready to throw the marriage away. So it's better to know ahead of time when you can take action, take corrective action, than just to find out the hard way. I'd like to ask for your help. If you found this at all helpful, I'd like to ask you to share this video with a friend of yours. And I need your help to get the word out. My passion is to save millions of marriages. And if you can help me to share this video with others, I'd greatly appreciate that. Remember, what you make happen for others, God will make happen for you.